Oh, so welcome back to another video. We're going back into our 48 Laws of Power, Law 3, Part 2. And Part 3 is, Law 3 is conceal your intentions. Deception is always the best strategy, but the best deceptions require a screen of smoke to distract people's attention from your real purpose. The bland exterior, like the unreadable poker face, is often a perfect smoke screen, hiding your intentions behind the comfortable and familiar. If you lead the sucker down a familiar path, he won't catch on when you lead him into a trap. Ooh, that's good. That is good. In 1910, a Mr. Sam Giesel of Chicago sold his warehouse business for close to $1 million. He settled down to semi-retirement and the managing of his many properties. But deep inside, he itched for the old days of deal-making. One day, a young man named Joseph Will visited his office, wanting to buy an apartment he had up for sale. Giesel explained the terms. The price was $8,000, but he only required a down payment of $2,000. Will said he would sleep on it, but he came back the following day and offered to pay the full $8,000 in cash. If Giesel could wait a couple of days until a deal Will was working on came through. Even in semi-retirement, a clever businessman like Giesel was curious as to how Will would be able to come up with so much cash. Roughly $150,000 today so quickly. Will seemed reluctant to say and quickly changed the subject, but Giesel was persistent. Finally, after assurance of confidentiality, Will told Giesel the following story. Will's uncle was the secretary to a courtier of multimillionaire financiers. These wealthy gentlemen had purchased a hunting lodge in Michigan 10 years ago at a cheap price. They had not used the lodge for a few years, so they decided to sell it and had asked Will's uncle to get whatever he could for it. For reasons, good reasons of his own, the uncle had been nursing a grudge against the millionaires for years. This was his chance to get them back. He would sell the property for $35,000 to settle up. The finances were too wealthy to worry about this low price. The setup man would then turn around and sell the property again for its real price, $155,000. The uncle, Will, and the third man would split the profits from the second sale. It was all legal and for a good cause, the uncle's just retribution. Giesel had heard enough. He wanted to set up a buyer. Will was reluctant to involve him, but Giesel would not back down. The idea of a large profit plus a little venture had him champing at a bit. Will explained that Giesel would have to put up $35,000 in cash to bring the deal off. Giesel, a millionaire, said he would get the money with a snap of his fingers. Will finally relented and agreed to arrange a meeting between the uncle, Giesel, and the financiers in the town of Galesburg, Illinois. On a train ride to Galesburg, Giesel met the uncle, an impressive man with whom he avidly discussed business. Will also brought during a companion named George Gross. Will explained to Giesel that he himself was a boxing trainer, that Gross was one of the promising prize fighters he trained, and that he had asked Gross to come along to make sure the fighter stayed in shape. For a promising figure, Gross was unimpressive looking. He had gray hair and a beer belly, but Giesel was so excited about the deal that he didn't really think about the man's appearance. Once in Galesburg, Will and his uncle went to fetch the financiers while Giesel waited in the hotel room with Gross, who promptly put on his boxing shorts. Gross began to shadow box. Distracted as he was, Giesel ignored how badly the boxer reeled after a few minutes of exercise, although his style seemed real enough. An hour later, Will and his uncle reappeared with the financiers. The meeting with Will and the financiers agreed to sell the lodge to Giesel. He had already had the $35,000 when he went to the bank. The minor business now settled, the financiers sat back in their chairs and began to banter about high finance, throwing out the name J.P. Morgan as if they knew the man. And if you know, J.P. Morgan is the Illuminati. Finally, one of them noticed the box in the room. Will explained what he was doing there. The finance countered that he too had a boxer in his entourage whom he named. Will laughed brazenly, explained that his man could easily knock out the man. Conversation escalated into an argument. In the heat of passion, Will challenged the men to a bet. The financiers eagerly agreed and left to get their man ready for a fight the next day. As soon as they left, the uncle yelled at Will right in front of Giesel. They did not have enough money to bet with, and once the financiers discovered this, the uncle would be fired. Will apologized for getting him into the mess, but he had a plan. He knew the other boxer Will, and with a little bribe they could fix the fight. But where would the money come from for the bet, the uncle replied. Without it, they were as good as dead. Finally, Giesel had heard enough. Unwilling to jeopardize his deal with any ill will, he offered his own $35,000 cash for part of the bet. Even if he lost that, he could wire for more money and still make a profit on the sale of the lodge. The uncle and nephew thanked him. With their own $35,000 and Giesel's $30,000, they could manage to have enough for the bet. That evening, as Giesel watched the two boxers rehearse the fix in the hotel room, his mind reeled at the killing he was going to make from both the boxing match and the sale of the lodge. The fight took place in the gym the next day. Will handed the cash, which was placed for security, in a locked box. Everything was proceeding as planned. The financiers were looking glum how badly their fighter was doing, and Giesel was dreaming about the easy money he was about to make. Then suddenly a wild swing by the financiers' fighter hit Gross hard in the face, knocking him down. When he hit the carpet, blood spurted from his mouth. He coughed and then lay still. One of the financiers, a former doctor, checked his pulse. He was dead. Ooh. The millionaire panicked. Everyone had to get out before the police arrived. They could all be charged with murder. Terrified, Giesel hightailed it out the gym and back to Chicago, leaving behind his $35,000, which he was only too glad to forget, for it seemed a small price to pay to avoid being implemented in a crime. He never wanted to see Will or any of the others again. After Giesel skirted out, Gross stood up under his own steam. The blood that had spurted from his mouth came from a ball filled with chicken blood and hot water that he had hidden in his cheek. The whole affair had been masterminded by Will, better known as the Yellow Kid, one of the most creative con artists in history. Will split the $35,000 with the finances and the boxes, a nice little profit for a day's work. The Yellow Kid had staked out Giesel as a perfect sucker before he set up the con. He knew the boxing match scam would be the perfect ruse to separate Giesel from his money quickly and definitively. But he also knew that if he had begun by trying to interest Giesel in a boxing match, he would have failed miserably. He had to conceal his intention and switch attention, create a smokescreen in case of the sale of the lodge. On the train ride and in the hotel room, Giesel's mind had been completely occupied with the pending deal of easy money, the chance to hot knot with wealthy men. He had failed to notice that Gross was out of shape, middle-aged at best. Such is the distracting power of a smokescreen. Engrossed in a business deal, Giesel's attention was easily diverted to the boxing match, but only at a point when it was already too late for him to notice the details that would have given Gross away. The match, after all, now depended on a bribe rather than the boxer's physical condition, and Giesel was so distracted at the end by the illusion of the boxer's death that he completely forgot about his money. If that ain't a good scam, I don't know what is. Learn from Yellow Kid. The familiar, inconspicuous front is the perfect smokescreen. Approach your mark with an idea that seems ordinary enough, a business deal, financial intrigue. The sucker's mind is distracted, his suspicious ally. That is when you gently guide him into the second path, the slippery slope down when he slides helplessly into your trap. That is, man, that was a smart maneuver. Am I going to be able to finish this? Observance of law, too. In the mid-1920s, the power warlords of Ethiopia were coming to the realization that Haile Selassie, also known as Rastafari, was outcompeting them all and nearing the point where he could proclaim himself their leader, unifying the country for the first time in decades. Haile Selassie was bad. Most of his rivals could not understand how this whizzy-quick, mind-metal man had been able to take control. In 1927, Selassie was able to summon the warlords one at a time to come to Addis Ababa to declare their loyalty and recognize him as leader. Some hurried, some hesitated, but only one, the Jasmine Balka of Sedamo, defied Selassie. Boucher was a great warrior, and he considered the new leader weak and unworthy. Finally, Selassie, in his gentle but stern way, commanded Boucher to come. The warlord decided to obey, but in doing so, he would turn the tables on the pretender to the Ethiopian throne. He would come to Addis Ababa at his own speed and with an army of 10,000 men, a force large enough to defend himself, or even start a civil war. Selassie did indeed send emissaries, asking Boucher to attend an afternoon banquet in his honor. But Boucher, no fool, knew history. He knew the previous kings and lords of Ethiopia had used banquets as a trap. Once he was there and full of drink, Selassie would have him arrested and murdered. To signal his understanding of the situation, he agreed to come to the banquet, but only if he could bring his personal bodyguard, 600 of his best soldiers, all armed and ready to defend him and themselves. To Boucher's surprise, Selassie answered with the utmost politeness, then he would be honored to play host to such warriors. On the way to the banquet, Boucher warned his soldiers not to get drunk and to be on their guard. When they arrived at the palace, Selassie was charming. Boucher refused to be charmed, and he warned Selassie that if he did not return to his camp by nightfall, his army had orders to attack the capital. Selassie reacted if it was hurt by his mistrust. Over the meal, when it came time for traditional songs in honor of Ethiopia's leaders, he made a point of allowing only songs honoring the warlord Sedamo. He made a point, it seemed to Boucher that Selassie was scared, intimidated by the great warrior. Boucher believed that he would be the one to call the shots in the days to come. At the end of the afternoon, Boucher and his soldiers began their march back to camp amidst cheers and gun salutes. Looking back to the capital over his shoulder, he planned his strategy, how his own soldiers would march through the capital in triumph within weeks, and Selassie would be put in his place, either prison or death. When Boucher came in sight of camp, however, he saw that something was terribly wrong. Where before there were colorful tents, there was nothing but smoke. What devil's magic was this? A witness told Boucher what happened. During the banquet, a large army commanded by Selassie had stolen up to Boucher's encampment. The army had not come to fight. Knowing that Boucher would have heard a noisy battle and hurried back to the 600-man bodyguard, Selassie had armed his own troops with baskets of gold and cash. They had surrounded Boucher's army and proceeded to purchase every last one of their weapons. That was a smart move. Those who refused were easily intimidated. Within a few hours, Batcher's entire force had been disarmed and scattered in all directions. Realizing his danger, Boucher decided to march south with his 600 soldiers to regroup. But the same army that had disarmed his soldiers blocked his way. Wow. The other way out was to march on the capital, but Selassie had set a large army to defend it. Wow. Like a chess player, he had predicted Boucher's moves and had checkmated him for the first time in his life. Wow. Throughout Selassie's long reign, no one could figure him out. Ethiopians, like their leaders, fierce, but Selassie, who wore the front of the gentle, peace-loving man, lasted longer than any of them. Never angry or impatient, he lured his victim with sweet smiles, lulling them with charm before he attacked. In the case of Boucher, Selassie played on the man's warness, his suspicion that the banquet was a trap, which in fact it was, but not the one he expected. Wow. Selassie waves an ally in Boucher's fears, letting him bring his bodyguard to the banquet, giving him top billing there, making him feel in control, created a thick smoke screen, concealing the real action 3 miles away. Remember, the paranoid and weary are often the easiest to deceive. Wow. With their trust in one area, you can have a smoke screen that blinds their view in another, letting you creep up and level them with devastating blow. A helpful or apparently honest gesture, or one that implies the other person's superiority. These are perfect diversionary devices. Properly set up, the smoke screen is a weapon of great power. It enables Selassie to totally destroy his enemy without firing a single bullet. Wow. Okay, we're going to end that there. Shoot, I'm going to have to come back. Yep, it's 2 more pages. All right, have a good day. Like, share, subscribe.